Hello, and welcome back to the Wednesday Project. I'm Christina, and I'm glad you're here. We've been doing something together over the past several weeks, something I hope has mattered to you. We've been talking about what it means to attach, to stay, to love without losing yourself. And at some point, something breaks. Not because you did it wrong, not because the relationship was a mistake, but because you are human, and so are they. Today, we talk about what happens after the break. We talk about the way back. I want to start by naming something that I think a lot of us have quietly believed, but maybe never said out loud. We think rupture is a sign that something is wrong, that if we were healthier, we would communicate better, that if we were more spiritually mature, we would have less conflict, that if we were doing it right, whatever it is, we wouldn't end up here in the cold silence, in the unresolved tension, in the room where something broke. I want to offer you something different today. Rupture is not the exception in close relationships. It's the reality. And it doesn't happen only in marriages. It happens between parents and adult children who love each other and keep getting stuck in the same place. It happens between siblings carrying decades of shared history and the weight of things that were never said. It happens between close friends who didn't mean for the distance to grow, but it grew anyway. It happens between colleagues who have to sit across from each other on Monday after something went wrong on Friday. Wherever there is attachment, there's the possibility of rupture. That's not a warning. That's just what it means to be in relationship with another person who is also carrying something. The goal was never to avoid rupture. The goal was always to find a way back. Before we can talk about repair, I want to slow down for a moment and name what's actually happening in the body when rupture occurs, because I don't think we can repair what we don't understand. If you've been with me for a few episodes, you've heard me talking about the nervous system. And if that's a new language for you, let me ground it in something you already know. When I say activation, I mean that moment when something shifts in your body. Your chest tightens, your jaw sets, something in you braces. That's your nervous system registering threat. Not necessarily danger, but something that feels like it. And when I say regulation, I mean the return. When your body finds its way back to a place where you can think clearly and stay present and make grounded choices. Here's what I see regularly in the therapy room. And I want to speak to this carefully because I think it's one of the most important things I could say today. People come and focused entirely on the incident. What was said, who started it, who owes the apology. And that makes sense. The incident is what we can see. It's what they remember. It's what plays on repeat at 2 a.m. But the intensity of what they're feeling is rarely proportional to the incident alone. Because their nervous system isn't just responding to this rupture with this person. It's responding through the lens of every time they've felt unseen, abandoned, dismissed, or unsafe. The rupture becomes a portal into something older and deeper, which is why it feels bigger than it should. I see the person who goes completely silent in conflict because silence was the only safe option growing up. I see the person who escalates, not because they want to, but because nobody ever stayed to work it through. And some part of them is still waiting to find out if someone will. I see the person who apologizes immediately, reflexively, because keeping the peace was survival. And they have made an art form of disappearing before anyone can leave first. These aren't character flaws. These are adaptations. And they were brilliant once. So before you try to repair what broke between you and someone else, get curious about what the rupture is activating in you. Not as an excuse, not as a detour, as information. Because that information is where the real work lives. I want to define repair, not the clinical version, my version. Because I think we've inherited a definition of repair that sounds something like this. Say the right words fast enough. Make the discomfort stop. Return to normal as quickly as possible so we can all pretend it didn't happen. That's not repair. That's management. And management has a shelf life. Repair is finding your way back to each other without abandoning yourself in the process. It means staying present enough to return, not collapsing into placation just to end the tension, not attacking to protect yourself, not disappearing because the discomfort became too much to hold. It means something in you remains, even when something between you has broken. There's a verse in Colossians that I think gets misused a lot. Colossians 3:13 says, "Bear with one another and forgive each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive." The first time I read that, I heard it as instruction. Bear with people, forgive people. That's the assignment. But I don't think the weight is in the first half. I think the weight is in the second. As the Lord has forgiven you. This posture of bearing and returning is not something we manufacture. It's something we've received. The capacity to repair with another person comes from having first been repaired with. And we have been. I think some of us are exhausted because we've been trying to create repair from an empty place, trying to offer steadiness we ourselves have never experienced, trying to move towards others while believing deep down that no one would ever move toward us. But the gospel tells a different story. God moved toward us first. Before we had the right words, before we had made things right, before we fully understand what we had broken, He moved toward us. Which means we don't approach the rupture in front of us with nothing. We approach it already held, already known, already repaired with. And from that place, we can find the way back. I want to take you into a story You've probably heard it before, but I want you to hear it differently today. Not as a story about forgiveness, as a story about repair. Luke 15, the prodigal son. You know the setup. The younger son takes his inheritance early, which in that culture was essentially saying to his father, I wish you were dead. That's the rupture. It doesn't get more ruptured than that. He leaves, he loses everything, and eventually he comes to himself. That beautiful phrase. And he turns toward home. He has a speech prepared. He's rehearsed the words. He knows what he'll say, and he's going to get it right this time. But here's what happens. While he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. The father sees him at a distance and he runs. The repair doesn't start with the son's words. It starts with the father's body moving toward him, regulated presence moving toward the other. Before the son can speak, the father has already made it safe to be found. And I think this is what so many of us misunderstand about God. We think we have to return to him through perfect words, perfect repentance, perfect articulation. We rehearse our speech on the way home. We try to get it right. Meanwhile, Scripture keeps showing us a father who runs toward people while they are still a long way off. The father's nervous system was already oriented toward return. He was already watching, already ready. And when the moment came, his body knew what to do before his mind had to decide. That's what repair looks like when it comes from a regulated place. It moves toward. It doesn't wait to be convinced. But there's another person in this story that I don't want to skip past. The older son. He's been faithful. He's been present. And when his brother returns and the celebration begins, he's furious. He won't go in. He's in rupture too, with his father, with his brother, and the father goes out to him as well. The invitation is there. But the story ends without resolution for the older son. Not because repair wasn't available, but because he couldn't let himself be found in it. Two people, same story, same father, same invitation, different response. I'm not saying that to judge the older son. I'm saying it because I think most of us have been both sons at different points in our lives. The relationship isn't lost in the rupture. It's revealed in the repair. So, what does this actually look like? Not in a story, in a Tuesday. In the silence after something went wrong. In the text you don't know how to write. In the conversation you keep postponing. I want to offer you a few things, not as a formula, as an invitation. Repair doesn't start with the right words. It starts when your body is steady enough to stay, which means sometimes the first move isn't toward the other person. It's toward yourself. Noticing what's activated before you speak into it. Giving yourself enough space to come back to a regulated place, back to somewhere you can think and choose and stay. And then a pause that isn't withdrawal, a pause that isn't leaving. It's staying, just more slowly. Because slowness is often the difference between reacting from fear and responding from presence. God rarely rushes people into healing. And we do not tend each other well when we move faster than love. Sometimes repair is slowing the pace of your voice, even when everything in you wants to rush. Because your tone is information to the nervous system across from you. They're reading you before they're hearing you. And sometimes repair sounds like, I think I lost you for a second. Can we try again? Sometimes it's just staying in the room when everything in you wants to leave. That's not weakness. That's the way back. James 1:19 says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. I don't think this is a communication tip. We talked about this last week. I think this is a practice of the soul. Slowness creates space for the body to remember that it is no longer fighting for survival. Slowness is how you stay present long enough to find the way back. I want to say something that I hope stays with you long after this episode ends. Secure attachment isn't proven by the absence of rupture, but by the ability to repair. This is what safety actually looks like in motion. Not we never break, but we know the way back. This is how trust is built, not by never fracturing, but by returning again and again and again, which is perhaps why grace is so central to Christianity, because God understood long before we did that humans would need many returns, that the story of his people would be a long story of rupture and repair, of wandering and coming home, of losing the way and being found. Relationships don't deepen in the easy seasons. They deepen in the returning. And here's what I want this to mean for you going forward. You don't have to be afraid of rupture anymore. Not because it won't hurt, it will. Not because it will be easy, it won't be. But because you know the way back exists. And you've already been shown what it looks like to be moved toward before you could even find the words. Before you go, the next time something breaks between you and someone you love, notice what happens in you first. Notice how quickly you want to fix it, or defend, or disappear. And see if there is just enough steadiness, just enough ground to come back. Maybe that's the deeper mercy of all this, that God did not design relationship around perfection. He designed it around return. return to each other, return to ourselves, return to Him. You don't have to get it right. You just have to return. I'll sit with you again next Wednesday. Until then, be slow, be willing to return, be His.